If you have been here for a bit, you know I take my share of longevity supplements. However, one of the few longevity supplement companies I trust and whose supplements I would actually put in my body is DoNotAge. Because not only are they a supplement company, but first and foremost, they are a research organization, meaning they put a ton of clinical research into every single one of their supplements before releasing them onto the market. In today's video, we are talking once more to Ellen Graves, the clinical research advisor for DoNotAge. And Ellen is going to share some new and exciting longevity research DoNotAge is currently conducting with us, as well as the results of some past research. And without further ado, let's talk to Ellen. Ellen, it's great to have you again. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Claudia.
Now, Ellen, really briefly, since I spoke to you last, you changed positions within the company. You are now the clinical research advisor for DoNotAge. Tell us really briefly what that entails.
So I sit on the advisory board alongside Professor Vera Gorbanova and Dr. Nick Engerer. My main responsibilities are just to help shape the future of our research direction. So what we're studying, what we're looking at in those studies, deciding which studies to prioritize, where we're going to spend that research funding. And I think the most important thing that I do is to translate complex scientific results into layman's terms, because not all of us are scientists. And so it's about bridging that gap and making it accessible for everybody.
And I appreciate that. And I know so does everybody else. Because I know I looked at all of the studies we're going to be talking about, and some of them are rather complex. So it is nice to get them bite-sized. But let's talk about the first study you just recently did. So nitric oxide is the it molecule right now. In fact, I recently had Dr. Nathan Bryan, who is the authority on nitric oxide on my channel, and he considers it to be the longevity molecule.
No, nitric oxide is a gas. It's naturally produced in the human body. It regulates many important biological functions like blood flow and circulation and tissue oxygenation. It tells our own stem cells to mobilize and differentiate. It activates the mitochondria within every cell in the body to make more energy more efficiently. It prevents the ends of our chromosomes from getting shorter, so it extends our lifespan. And the loss of nitric oxide production is now recognized as the earliest event in the onset and progression of all age-related chronic disease. So if that's not foundational and important, then I don't know what is.
Now, you guys at DoNotAge just recently came out with a nitric oxide producing supplement, which is exciting. Of course, you already have some research on it. You just recently completed a double-blind placebo-controlled trial, gold standard. Tell us a little bit about that trial.
First, it's probably wise for me to just let people know that nitralis, which is the ingredient we were testing, works along the nitrite pathway. That's the same one that you get when you eat beets and leafy greens. And as we age, that pathway to make nitric oxide remains effective. If you look at some of the old style supplements, you'll see they're full of like arginine and citrulline, and they rely on something called the enos pathway, which has very, very little efficiency as you age. When you're 40, it's about 50% efficient. And so past that, obviously, it just gets worse.
That's actually exactly what Dr. Bryan said as well. He talked about eating green leafy vegetables or supporting that pathway, and that basically taking amino acids like arginine, citrulline is pointless. So glad you guys understood for that.
Yes, exactly. That's right. The science doesn't lie. So this is a gold standard study that we did, published at the end of 2025. There was 85 people, and they were all either middle-aged or older. It was across 30 days, and the participants, half of them were taking a placebo, and the other half were taking nitralis. And then what we did is we measured their nitric oxide levels. We also used something called the SF-36 questionnaire, which is a very standard questionnaire across clinical trials, and that's just to see how people were feeling. And obviously there were positive results there, but I think the most important thing is the increase in nitric oxide levels in the group that was taking nitralis was 226%. And obviously the group taking the placebo didn't see any increase. So that's the study in a nutshell.
That's impressive. Now, really briefly, let me ask you, I remember Dr. Bryan saying that it was not possible to measure or test nitric oxide. I believe he was probably talking about a blood test. Tell us how you measured nitric oxide for this particular study.
That's right. So the mouth's quite important when it comes to nitric oxide, and so you can do it through saliva. So every participant was given test strips. They get their saliva on it, and then it turns a different color depending on the levels of nitric oxide.
That's great to know. And like you said, this is the gold standard trial, which is amazing. The only thing we have to mention is that it's not peer reviewed quite yet, and that
Not yet.
obviously you had an interest in the study turning out well because you conducted it. But still, aside from that, it's a really great trial.
Yeah, exactly. And it should also be noted as well that a lot of the studies we do, in fact, the vast majority of research that we support is external. So it's people that are just coming to us to use our ingredients. So this particular one was something that we did internally, but the vast majority of the research that we support is external and done in all corners of the globe.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any other trials coming up, any other studies coming up on nitralis?
So we're looking at nitralis in blood pressure, and we're also looking at how it helps exercise performance.
Okay. Now, I remember I came across some research. I can't think of her name right now, the scientist, but basically she was saying that nitric oxide affects females very differently from males, especially when they're still in their reproductive years. Anything like that in the future that you're going to look at how it affects males versus females?
Yes, potentially. I think what we'd probably do is, rather than have a specific trial for that, is use a mixture of males and females and then look at how it affects them differently. But what we do know is that keeping nitric oxide levels is necessary and healthy for both sexes. It just affects them slightly different.
Yeah, she was saying definitely after menopause, it's quite important for females to either make sure the nitric oxide levels stay high naturally or supported with a supplement. But she was saying that in reproductive years, the effect was different. So I found that interesting.
Definitely. And I think that it's a big thing that we see in women that go through the menopause. Things like nitric oxide and sirtuin activity level, all those things, they're already decreasing. And then when menopause hits, it sort of feels like it drops off a cliff, you know?
Great. Something you guys
Sorry.
about. But since you just brought up sirtuin, you also, I know you're going to do a human trial on your SIRT6 activator, but you finished a mouse trial not too long ago. So let's talk about both of these. First of all, I want to say something really briefly with the mouse trial. Personally, I'm not the biggest fan of animal testing, obviously. I know you're not either. Most people aren't. But I know DoNotAge, you're not abusing these poor mice. They're just being fed SIRT6 activator in their feet, right?
We have a code of conduct that we have to follow. So there's no animal torture.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. But let's talk about, first of all, what sirtuins are, and then why sirtuin 6 particularly is so important.
Sirtuins are proteins that do repair work in your body. And as you get older, they work less well. There's 7 of them, and they're called SIRT1 all the way through to SIRT7. The most important one, that's often called the longevity gene, is SIRT6. It stands out as the most important for longevity because it sort of sits at the crossroad of lots of different aging hallmarks. And when we looked at older people that were still healthy, the correlation that they all had was they all had a very active SIRT6. It does things like repair DNA damage, maintain your genome stability, and reduce chronic inflammation.
Thank you for explaining that. So talk about that mouse trial, because it was quite impressive. I looked at it. It was very complex. So I'm glad you're breaking it down for us in layman's terms.
Well, I'm going to try my best. We started at 15 months old, which is just above middle-aged human, gave them SIRT6 activator in their food. And important to notice that we not only looked at how old the mice became, because we saw a massive lifespan extension, which was pretty incredible, but we also looked at their health as well. So health, what people would call health span. The male mice had around 15% lifespan increase, and the female mice less than that, about 4%, something like that. But both sexes showed massively reduced frailty. So yes, they lived longer, but while they were alive, they all lived better. And frailty is things like your grip, your gait, vision, and a few other different markers. And we also looked at their biological age as well, which I think people in your audience will be familiar with by now. And of course, across both sexes, the biological age was a lot younger for those that were taking the SIRT6 activator. Yeah, massively increased health span, less frailty, and better function for everyone, which then leads us into the human trial that we're doing at the moment.
Now we have to really briefly explain what SIRT6 activator is made of. It's from cocoidin, right?
Yeah, so it's a polysaccharide that is derived from seaweed. And the great thing about that is it's natural, it is abundant. The difficult thing about that is when we test different fucoidins, we get different, and from different seaweeds, we get different responses. And so that's why SIRT6 activator was created. Every batch is sent to Professor Gorbanova's lab, and she tests it for SIRT6 activity to make sure it's a strong activator. And the interesting thing that she finds whenever she does it is, about 10% of the samples that we get will activate SIRT6. 80% in the middle will do very little. And then 10% at the bottom actually inhibit SIRT6. So they do the opposite of what you want.
And to my understanding, in this particular mouse trial, you also tested some other compounds, which we used to think activates a 2 and 6, right? And it was actually the same thing. Some actually did the opposite.
Exactly. Yeah. There's a few other different compounds that have tried to purport in the past to be activated as the 2 and 6. So we tested those as well. And yeah, some of them inhibited and some of them didn't do anything. So
now, so 2 and 6 is NAD dependent. In this mouse trial, were they just taken SIRT6 activator, or did you also give them an NAD precursor?
No. So we wanted to make sure it was definitely the SIRT6 activator that was making the difference. And so we thought if we give them NMN as well, then that might muddy the waters. And so we did not give them any kind of NAD boosting. So this was purely activating SIRT6 without putting more fuel in. And so obviously we could theorize that if you put more fuel in as well, it would supercharge the results. But again, that's just a theory at the moment.
Okay. So tell us about the upcoming human trial, which is quite exciting on SIRT2 and 6.
Again, gold standard trial, placebo-controlled, randomized. And in this one, we are partnering as well as with Professor Gorbanova, with Professor Andrea Maya. She runs the National University of Singapore's aging department. And it was great that they did it because we tried to do it in the US first and we had a lot of red tape. So that one wasted a few months. And the trial's already started now, late 2025 it started. And again, healthy adults, so people between the age of 50 and 80. And there's around 60 participants. And then the primary outcome that we're looking for is biological age as measured by GrimAge, which is an accurate second generation biological clock. And we're also looking at lots of secondary markers as well, including reduction of inflammation, frailty scores, glycan age, quality of life, brain function, reproductive health, heart markers, and skin aging as well. So we're going to be taking photos of the participants' faces before, during, and after, and having a look at the difference it makes to their skin as well.
Okay, that's pretty extensive. I'm glad that you're not just. While I do think that biological age is important, and we talk about it a lot, there are a few experts that are doubting the accuracy of biological age testing. So I'm glad that that is just one aspect you guys are looking at, and quite another list of other markers as well.
Yeah, exactly. And even when we look at biological age, the things that are important to us are what makes up that age. And it's all inflammatory markers and different data points rather than the actual age. But the age just helps us have a headline,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So how long is this trial going to run for?
So this trial is going to be 6 months. And so we're expecting results before the end of 2026.
That's exciting. I'm looking forward to seeing the outcome of that. I have been taking SIRT6 activator ever since you guys came out with it. Honestly, there are some supplements that I take I can really notice a difference from. NMN is my desert island supplement. You'd have to take it out of my cold dead hands. But SIRT6 activator I take because of the trials and because I trust DoNotAge. I don't notice a difference from it, but I have gotten some great feedback on it from people who have noticed quite a difference from it. So it's going to be exciting to see the outcome of this trial.
That's right. And we know that from the mouse trial, how it works is through activating SIRT6, which helps then reduce systemic inflammation, which is a big problem. And so this is why we do the science, because especially with longevity supplements, you're not always going to feel something on day one. Sometimes you might never feel something, but what you're doing is you're stopping further damage happening. And so this is a good reason as well why we do the research, so that we can say, hey, look, it is working. But it's not a caffeine pill, so you might not feel it straight away. So I'm the same as you. I'm taking Certix activator, and it's not like it gives me a buzz or anything like that. I'm taking it based on the science.
Yeah. I do get amazing feedback though on a lot of your supplements from people. And it's just, I bring up this one story every time I think you and I talk, because it's stuck with me. It's this woman that emailed me telling me that she had chronic fatigue syndrome since, I thought it was 1979. It was actually 1971 when I looked at her email again. But she had seen one of my videos on NMN, which is an NAD precursor. And back then I gave it to Sam, my dog, who was aging. And she had a 16-year-old dog. So she thought, let me give it to my dog, see what happens. And she said the dog suddenly got off the couch, wanted to play. So she said, all right, let me try it. And she emailed me saying, this is the only thing since 1971 I have noticed a real difference from. And every time I tell this story, I get goosebumps. I've told it so many times. But I was
It makes you feel emotional.
So basically, almost my whole life, this woman has suffered. And then she takes a form of vitamin B3, boosts her NAD, and suddenly she can tell a difference. And that's just one of the feedback I've gotten. I mean, I've gotten incredible feedback from people with long COVID, from older people who are suddenly swimming twice the laps they were before, and things like that. So,
right. And like, most people, they just want to feel better.
You and I were living in this time where aging is not so scary anymore. All this research is emerging, and we know now what to do and what not to do. And sometimes it's a bit exhausting. The list just gets longer and longer, but it beats the alternative.
Yeah, exactly. That's what they used to say before we knew about being able to reverse aging. They used to say, nobody wants to live to 100 until they're 99.
Yeah, exactly. And, you're still quite young, but I have seen quite a few of my friends' parents struggle with what we call age-related diseases, and we think that's just normal. Yeah. That's just what happens. Well, they can actually be prevented or even reversed with the right lifestyle choices. So that's why I'm excited to live in this time. Anyways, I'm going on here. You've had another, talking about SIR2 and 6, you had another trial on quercetin, showing that quercetin activates SIR2 and 6. So tell us about that.
That's right. Again, some scientists reach out to us. These were from Northern Ireland and just said, hey, we believe in quercetin. We think it might be able to help control the damage that people receive from exercise. Would you guys want to collaborate? And so we did a couple of years ago. And now the study's been published. I think it was healthy people between 30 and 45 years old, gave them high intensity exercise. So like imagine being on one of those bikes at the gym and just having to go full pelt and then stop and then full pelt. And the reason they do that, it causes DNA damage. And then they were looking at the effects of that DNA damage between two groups. So one that was taking the DoNotAge.org pure quercetin and another with the placebo. And they measured the DNA damage and repair and gene expression and things like that. So they found that quercetin did actually improve the recovery from exercise through faster DNA repair and higher expression of different repair genes, including Certix and PARP1 and quite a few other different ones. But basically, it reduced the amount of damage and decreased the inflammation. So makes your cells handle damage better and recover quicker.
That's awesome. Now, I do want to step back for a second because you said exercise causes DNA damage, which is true, but we don't want to give people an excuse and say, well, I'm not exercising, causes DNA damage. The body will repair that. The older we get, the harder it is to repair that. That's where, nutrition comes in and helps to repair it.
Yes, exactly. That's right. Yes. Exercise is still a good thing. If you do really, really, really high intensity exercise, then it will take your body longer to recover, particularly as you get older. Again, that doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing. This was just a way to decrease the amount of time and increase the amount of DNA damage. That's why they used high intensity exercise. But yes, everybody should still move their body.
Now, any other studies coming up?
Yep. So we've got quite a few on the go at the moment. Probably the one that I will hint towards is we've been working on something for a couple of years now, and we are trying to make sure that it's very simple and that people don't need, 100 different supplements. And so we're trying to do a human trial on that. And we're very confident that we've got it right now. So those results should be available within a couple of months. I can come on and talk about them then.
So something like an all-in-one supplement.
Similar, but
Okay.
super duper.
Okay. Well, of course. One thing I want to stress, obviously, I take my share of longevity supplements. It's become a full-time job, basically, for me to take all my supplements. But we are not saying people should take supplements, and you cannot out-supplement a crappy lifestyle. Like we said, exercise is very, very important. Sleep, stress management, supplements are that. They're supplements.
That's right. I think people should quit the McDonald's and quit the Marlboros before they start with supplements, you know?
Yeah. Now, last time we spoke, you talked about a bumblebee trial on NMN. You told me that had to be stopped, right? Or it was put on hold for a moment.
Yes, unfortunately. So the professor that was working at that university then left. And so it kind of got, rather than someone else taking up the mantle, it just got left alone. So we don't know exactly how far along they got.
Now, this was regarding bumblebees being protected from pesticides.
Yeah, that's right. So, I mean, they may have even finished the study and just needed to do the statistics, which does take a long time. But unfortunately, because the professor that was running the study left the university, we've been left in the dark.
I can imagine that being somewhat frustrating because you do have so many ongoing studies and studies in the making, and they're all done in different facilities. I can imagine that being a little frustrating at times.
It is, but unfortunately, there's not much we can do about it. So we just have to move on and continue supporting all the research that we can so that when we get these results, we're learning and helping to shape the future of people's health.
Well, thank you so much. Is there anything else you would like to add?
Just a big thank you to you for spreading the word, and a big thank you to your audience as well. I know many of them are DoNotAge users and have had great experiences with us, which I'm very happy about. And I'm just really appreciative because without those people, we couldn't do the research. That's where we get the money for the research. So thank you very much to everybody.
Thank you. And thanks for being here.
All right. Thanks, Mdarie.